Vicky said something to us really important. She said that we are extremely lucky to have all of these wonderful guests that we can learn from today. And so there will be numbers of workshops that you'll be attending where you'll meet these guests and you can unpick their wonderful ideas, their wonderful brains, and just learn a bit about their stories. But I'm going to introduce you now to two people who I have been very fortunate to cross paths with previously when I was head teacher at William Perkin, and now as a head teacher with Ada Lovelace. I first heard about these gentlemen when they'd done some incredible sculptures for the London Olympics to make that London Olympics sort of sing out as wonderful and brilliant. And they were introduced to us at William Perkin, and those of you that have been to William Perkin, some of the older students started there, will remember the sculpture that hangs from the ceiling. And that was produced by these guys, my friends Neil and Jono. And when we were lucky enough, or when I was lucky enough, to be offered the opportunity to be head teacher here at Ada Lovelace, I wanted us to put down a sculpture that really made us, which represented Ada, but more importantly than that, made us be proud of our school and made us think of our past and make us think of our future. And in order to understand art, I know, because I'm not hugely brilliant at this, because I didn't have fantastic art teachers when I was at school, but I know by listening and learning from fantastic artists, it uplifts and improves your life. And my life has been made better just by the little bit of time I've spent with these two guys. These are the guys that put in place the amazing sculpture that we have outside, and they're going to talk a little bit about that with us, and they're also going to officially open it by putting a plaque there. And this was paid for by your very generous parent contributions. So this is something that belongs to all of us, and actually belongs to Elu too. So when we were putting forward this day, Neil and Jono are creative, I call them my creative genius friends, but these are guys that are embedded in the creative industry. But when I was talking to them about the sculpture that they produced, it became clear that there was absolutely no way that this incredible sculpture could appear and be produced without a brilliant use of technology. And so we started to talk as we were watching the sculpture appear. And the guys would sort of introduce me to this theme, which I then have sort of called this little part of the session, which is where creativity and technology meet. And they're going to talk to you about art, they're going to talk to you about creativity, and they're going to talk to you about technology. And you are going to have a fantastic time. Generously, they've even offered to stay around and meet some of our art students over one of the lunch periods. And I know that they'll be out and about at break time if you wanted to speak to them about art or any of the works that they've done. I like to say globally acclaimed. So I'll be quiet now. I want you to give them a massive round of applause, please, Neil and Jono.
Thank you very much for that, Keir, and lovely to see you again, Alice. Yes, we feel very welcome, especially by you today. It's all about you guys and your future.
Let's talk about some wild ideas and dreaming. Can we do that? Who in the room, hands up if you're interested in art, design, making stuff? Brilliant. Okay, great. And I want to say thank you to our pianist. That's creativity right there. There's such a close link between music and making. So, that's me. I'm Neil. That's Jono.
I'm Jono.
This is proof. We call ourselves M+R. We do work internationally. We're artists. We have a very exciting life. We work on many different projects. And we just want to share with you the way that we think. And essentially, the way that we think is to try and think of something that no one else has thought of. This is what innovation is, okay? If you think that you're a little bit peculiar in some way, I love that. Well done. That's exactly what we are.
That's exactly what we seek all the time.
Just to give you some context, this is a sculpture in Saudi Arabia. We work globally, and it's about freedom. It's hanging in one of the world's largest departure lounges, and it's programmed with a digital technology that mimics the movement of clouds. So there are 4 of these huge 12-metre high suspended structures, and every part of that is individually programmed to create the effect of clouds blowing through the departure lounge.
And in many ways, this is how we draw. So this we would call a drawing. Although it's using materials, it's using what you might see as a technology, it is in fact one of our drawings.
That is a drawing.
So, when we were asked to explore this idea of the crossover, or the relationship between technology and creativity, we thought, well, what is it? What is technology? Where does that word come from? And I mean, I'm sure you all have an idea about it. You've heard some ideas about it already this morning. But we looked at the roots of that word. So, in the Greek, techne is the science of art, and loga is the study of. So when you look at the science of craft, it's an art and a skill and a cunning of hand. Now, how many of you think, when you think of technology, of art or the using of your hands, who thinks it's that, or thought that before? Not many people, no. And a good example of technology, very early technology, is Paleolithic cutting stones or spears. They are things that are made using the craft and skill of your hand to change the world around you, to impact it, to improve your environment. And as Vicky said about the importance of IBM, it's not about the technology of using all the equipment and the materials that are around it, but it's actually about how it impacts on people. It's all about people. So when we're looking at the word technology, actually, it's very much about the things that you do with your hands to change your environment and change it for the better with others.
We work with so many different materials. We're not limited to the materials we work with. And this project is about bronze casting. And I'll just let Jono talk you through this.
So this is lovely. You'll see here, these are the originals that we made in what you might know as plasticine or oil clay. And we've made a sand mould, so we've cast sanded resin and rammed it over the top of the plasticine, and then made a mould, a solid mould, and we prepared that ready for casting bronze in. And here you see us, we're just cleaning out the slag from we're pulling out the crucible from the furnace. So we've melted down bronze at about 1200 degrees centigrade. So in all of this, I'm talking about technology, I'm talking about understanding materials, what happens when you put heat to metal, particular metals that have to be at different temperatures. You have to know what colour they have to be for them to be ready to be used. And then you need to know what to wear to protect yourself from getting burnt. And you'll see, so this is, you'll see Neil here in the orange hat in front, and I'm to the side about to catch the metal on the right, and my colleague Griff, who is running the furnace, is in the yellow. So you see we're now lowering the furnace to pour the molten bronze into the crucible. And then here we are, carefully taking it over, and then we'll see whether I'm doing a good job of pouring it. I think I did. And what we're doing here is we're capturing that original mark that was made in a piece of clay. So oil clay is plasticine, is basically a clay and wax. It's made with clay, wax and Vaseline. You make that object, and then you create a solid, permanent sculpture in bronze from that original clay pattern, something that you would have used, hopefully, when you were 3, 4 or 5. I still use it, and I still see it as a very important material for my art making. And here you'll see, just going backwards and forwards to pour all these different castings. This is the crew that we had for pouring that work. And then here are literally the castings coming straight out of the moulds. So you break open all the sand, and you're left with the casting. And it is a very hard one.
So let me just explain why we did that. And this is where those crazy ideas come in. We were commissioned to make a piece of art for a high street. And we thought what they probably want is some kind of statue, some kind of bench that you can sit on, maybe you can plant flowers in it, I don't know. We offered them 160 fragments of stories. This is one fragment of the story. It's one of the bronze castings set into the paling. So the crazy idea was, well, what if the art actually isn't a sculpture? What if it is a collection of community stories, things that people have said about the place they live, and then cast, in the same way that you would cast something really important, but this is just an everyday comment, and they're set into the paving. So the idea is where it starts, and your ideas, you don't need to know how to realise that idea, you just need to have the idea and believe in it, okay? That is what we're building at the moment.
That doesn't actually exist yet. That's a visualization. So it's a computer. This is using technology. We've used a computer to create a 3D model of what we plan to make next year.
I don't know if you've heard of the Bayeux Tapestry. It's very famous as a tapestry that represents William the Conqueror coming to England and winning in 1066. Now, this is a modern day version of that, because this is going to be entirely embroidered, and it also represents the stories of a community at a particular time. But the Bayeux Tapestry is only 70 square metres, this will be 800 square metres. We're going to fly this 5 times next year. It's commissioned for a borough of London, well, the Greenwich borough actually, but it's in Thamesmead. And it is a sculpture. Now, this is a wild idea. When we applied for this commission, it was a global application, anyone could apply. We had this crazy idea, what if we collected community stories, stitched them and flew them as an aerial gallery? And that's what I want to say to you, is that your idea can be as crazy. The stranger the better. If you're not like somebody else, you'll make a great artist.
And even in doing this, we didn't know whether we could or couldn't build a balloon. So it was a massive risk. You know, balloons can be built, so we guessed we must be able to. And we are now in the process of not only commissioning this piece of work, we will have to make it ourselves. We've already registered it as an aircraft. So we've had to register our first sculpture as an aircraft. Again, just like, I forget her name, sorry, the IBMer.
Oh, Vicky.
Not Vicky.
Tara.
Tara, yes. Tara said, you know, I could never imagine that I would have done that 5 years ago. I could never imagine that I would have registered an aircraft 5 years ago. But here we are. And it's about using that imagination, saying, well, what if? What if we do that?
So that brings us to thinking about how we approach the commission for Ada Lovelace. Kia invited us with Sue to look at something that could sit here. And we took this one quite literally in a sense, because we looked at the punch cards. These were being used in textile industry to program a loom to create a certain kind of pattern in a cloth. And what Ada Lovelace did was had one of those wild ideas, that kind of innovative thinking. And she thought, well, what if? So we end up with this as a representation of the punch card being one of the earliest examples of computer programming. And there's also something incredibly beautiful about it, just as an object. And what's interesting is that the punch card was never intended to be seen. That was just the background programming. Rather like, I like that example of the bunker underneath Wimbledon, with the kind of engine rooms of the computers. The punch card was that engine room. So what we wanted to do here was to make it very, very visible.
And many times when you look at and think about technology, you'll see these images of vast banks of computers, and you'll hear about miles and miles of cabling. And there's this lovely thing called looming that electricians do, where they loom lots of wires together. And we wanted to kind of represent and celebrate that in this piece. And so this image here is actually, this is the site. So this is what you'll have next to the work to tell the story, to share this piece. But this was one of the technical drawings by our engineer. So again, it was sharing with Kira as we talked, actually yes, computers are involved all along the way. These punch cards that were originally were made in cardboard and were punched out probably with hand punches or something. And what we've had to do is do a technical drawing, have it sent to a machine that then laser cuts it. So again, it's just changing that thinking about how materials work, transforming them by the use of technology. And what we love about this piece is, yes, it starts off with this idea of reflecting on Ada and the punch card, but actually it's a work that you can see through and beyond to. You can see through it to the sky. You can see through it to each other. It's a work that's interactive, and it's about that interactivity. And one of the things I loved about Ada was she saw technology as an important thing for collaboration, for bringing people together. And Neil and I try and do that all the time because, unfortunately, we have to work together. So we always have to try and collaborate. We haven't got much of a choice. I joke, I love it. I love working with other people. And this was not made by Neil and I. We did work on it, but we had to engage an engineer. We had to engage a civil engineer. We had to engage in working with grounds people. Everything you do has to be a collaboration. We had to work with the team here, with Kira and Sue and others, Jim, who worked on site. So everything you do, it has to grow. It has to be inclusive of others.
That's why I was saying it's your ideas that matter, because you can find someone else who can help you to work that out. Your ideas are the important thing. And this was the idea. This drawing here is the first drawing that we showed to this school to demonstrate our idea. So when you have an idea, you need to be able to visualize it. That might be through words, you might talk about it, you might draw it, you might sketch it. But it's really important not to keep that idea to yourself, but to say, look, here's my idea, how can we make this happen? So we wanted to include this because it was our idea in its first drawn form.
And you'll see on the wall there, we've also shown another piece that we proposed, which is, it's a reflection actually of the work that you have. And this lovely idea of reflecting the sky into the building, almost making holes in the side of the building. But again, it's about that inside-outside. And that's what you need to be thinking about, is yes, you're here for learning, but you're only here to learn how to live in this world. It isn't, also, Vicky was right, you need to be skilled to work, but you also need to be skilled to live. And there was a lovely piece of scripture at the bottom of your timetable, which was a quote from John, who I love because he's got the same name as me, Jonathan. But it was, what was it now? That's right. I have come that you might have life in all its fullness. And that's exactly what, as an artist, we seek after, is making work that inspires people to see beyond the everyday and to inspire them to show others beyond the everyday.
Let's show one more.
Yeah, this is the joy.
We're going to finish with an installation that is called Migration because it's just very, very playful. And I want you to also get hold of the idea that creativity is incredibly playful. Lots of learning might seem quite serious. For example, if you have to remember something or take an exam. For Jono and I, it's like a big playground. And this is a very serious installation actually, but incredibly playful at the same time. It's called Migration, and so it's looking at people who have to migrate from one place to another. Maybe they're displaced, maybe they've become refugees. But what we did was created 4,000 reflective elements in a landscape, and then we gave people torches, and we invited them to explore the landscape.
You'll see them revealed here across this waterway. And again, it's this thing of using materials, your hands, to transform your experience and the world around you. And it changes people's thinking. So it's a tiny torch. We had to try about 15 different torches to get the right one. It was the tiniest of all of them that worked. We used a special reflector that they use on the side of lorries, that they have as stickers that mark the side of the covers for lorries, and placed it on these little acrylic sticks. That's all it is, just a plastic cap with an acrylic stick. 4,000 of them, and it was transformative. And as Neil says, it was quite serious, but we only gave the title out, and there was a lovely moment where Neil and I were standing in the work, listening to people's conversations, and there was this lady, and she was using her torch and then covering it. And she turned to us, not knowing who we were, and she said, "Look, watch this." Covered the torch, put it back, covered the torch. She said, "I put my hand over it and they all disappear. It's just like the news. You hear about these horrendous things that happen, and you can just switch the TV off and they're all gone. But they're not, are they?"
So for us, it's an amazing privilege to be artists because we're not just being innovative thinkers ourselves, but we're encouraging all the time other people to be innovative thinkers. And what Jono just gave you is an example of how art can get you to think in a way you might not have thought otherwise. So thank you for listening. That's art.
Thank you very much to Neil and Jono for their presentation. I want to thank them for three things in particular. Firstly, for taking a theme, though I think they didn't even realise they were doing it, our theme for the year, that each of us has got stuff which is different about ourselves. Sometimes we might even feel embarrassed about our difference, but it is actually our unique characteristic which we can put out there and share. We've been thinking about that this year, so thank you to them for bringing that point forward. Secondly, I want to thank them for reminding us that what we're talking about here is about creativity, and whether we're problem solvers or whether we just simply have an idea that no one's had before. Each of those things are about being creative and applying the stuff that we've got in order to make the world a better place. And thirdly, I want to thank them for bringing together the idea of creativity in the arts and technology, making and digital stuff, and putting that together and how powerful that is when we bring those things together. And I got those three things from the talk and I found them all really, really powerful. I'm looking forward to seeing those installations. And do you know what? I'm going to enjoy the punch card even more for having had your talk. So shall we give them all another round of applause?